Greetings. How's it going? Just wait for everyone to pile in here for a minute or two. Really need to get one of those streams starting up graphics. Oh, quiet, huh? Is it better if I talk into the microphone? Check, check, check. Check. Well, that's all the way up. Yeah, it helps if you point the microphone at your face. That is a key part of it. In the meantime, we're going to do some deck editing while we wait for people to filter in here. That's as much juice as she's got. Yeah, the interface is up all the way. Unless it's not working. No, it's working. Check, check. Have you tried turning your computer volume up? I'm also pretty tired, so I'm just like not able to project super well. Well, I don't know what to tell you. This is as loud as I can get for right now. Let's see. In the meantime, just gonna pull an old deck list and work on that for just a little bit. This is the one we want. Man, 13,000 views on this deck. Love that. What up, fish? Download this guy. Go in here. Import the deck and hopefully it works magically. For the longest time, every time you'd import a white deck, Ameria would always error out on the import. Super annoying. Look how big I made these cards. It's because my eyesight is terrible now. It is hard for me to read small things. So I'll start you guys off with a philosophical question. I was at a taco shop the other night with a buddy, and there was what appeared to be a nickel on the ground, but my eyesight is bad enough that I couldn't distinguish between nickel or quarter, and we had just finished playing a few hours of softball, and my knees were very sore, so I did not bend down to pick it up. What is the lowest denomination of money that you will bend down to pick up? $1? Yeah. It's got to be at least a quarter for me. Quarter you can, like, do something with. Ooh, Mana Crypt's banned now. No more Mana Crypt. That's cool art. Hadn't seen that one. Does yes count? Yeah. And so I was asking my buddy about this, and he had a great answer, which was the value changes throughout your life, right? If things are going well, yeah, It's probably got to be like $1 if things aren't going so well. I'm taking nickels and dimes and maybe a penny. Maybe a penny. We'll start off with some light questions of what are the newer angels? So, at some point here, I'm aching to get back to doing Angel Tribal, and I do think we need to update it past the days of having 7/7 drops, because I think that's just too many these days, even though I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to cut, because I love all of these cards. But I think we need to do like a more modern take of this deck, for sure. What's the one with the angels? And what it makes? It makes clue tokens, I think. Wojak Investigator. Let's start there. Actually, I suppose we could just type angel and see what comes up for recent angels. Ooh, Avacyn got a... what does this give? I should really run this card in this deck. 2 counters on it. It gains Vigilance, Trample, Lifelink, and Indestructible, and Haste until end of turn. The counters are nice. The keywords are really good, but they only last until end of turn, though. That is a lot of really good keywords. So, that's a whole thing. That is a whole thing. Gisella's got to be in there, right? Angel Tomb, Restoration Angel. What are the, like, new good angels? Oh, that one doesn't look bad. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain 1 life. Yeah, that's solid in the right kind of build. Start doing, like, a Soul Sisters sort of thing. Because I noticed the angel cards started getting lower on the curve. Whenever another non-token, non-angel creature you control dies, return that card to the battlefield under his control with a +1/+1 counter. It's an angel. Ooh, that's pretty good. Valkyrie's Call? Hadn't seen that one. Oh, that's a pretty good one. We're supposed to be getting away from 7 drops, but that one seems disgusting. That seems really good. Giada. Ooh, Giada may not be in this version of the deck. Nope, she wasn't. Inspiring Overseer really kind of feels underwhelming without a way to blink it. I'm talking like maybe the last 2 years or so. Really looking at trying to figure out the low curve angels. See if we can get the mana curve of this deck down just a little bit. Yeah, there's definitely cards still not on MTGO. I would say... Yeah, that is my experience has been there are very few cards that I actually want to play that aren't on MTGO. The only time I really recall it from the course of, when I was making videos a lot was I remember when Dwarves came out in, what was the first Dwarf set? Ether Drift? Ether Revolt? The one before that, what's Kaladesh. I noticed it was a little bit lacking then. That was one of the one where I'm like, ooh, I'd really like to have this card, but it's not there. And there's been like a very small handful of others, at least with old cards. I guess they're missing. I guess they're missing some of the newer ones. The newer ones are the ones that hurt big time. But yeah, the old ones I hadn't seen a lot that like I actually really cared to play. Ooh, what's this guy? Enters 3 energy at the beginning of combat. In return, you may pay 2 energy when you do. Gains Vigilance and Lifelink until end of turn. Other creatures you control. It's kind of doesn't blow me away. I really thought that there were more low curve angels that came out in the past few years. Perhaps I am Archangel of Tithes. Well, I might need to work on this another time. You prefer dragons and demons for the Kalia spectrum? That is fair. They all do. Dragons are really good, right? Dragons is a really. I've said this for years that like, if you're both playing creature decks and one of you is playing dragons, your dragons are just better than basically every other creature type because, you know, in red dragons only, you can just like annihilate all the creatures on the board like very, very easily. Let alone you start adding other colors in there, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So yeah, dragons are just very, very good all of the time. Demons I haven't looked at in a really long time. I know they're big and they're powerful. A lot of them have like drawbacks and stuff. So it's that they're definitely not going to be bad. I would say demons because of a lot of the drawbacks. Off the cuff, I feel like are probably a little bit worse than angels. Angels are probably in the middle. Dragons are typically going to be the strongest. Oh yeah, we got a Rally of the Law above. Got this Vindicator guy. Here we go. Here's the low curve angels. What does this one do? Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, investigate. It's not awful. I wonder if we want a little mirror entity action in this deck. Okay, everyone do me a favor. Hit the like button, and then we're going to start our discussion on the bracket system. Not that. This. Maybe we can do like a better picture somewhere. I think it's this one. Yeah. Paint. Just open it. Maybe we'll do Chrome. There we go. Cool. Hey, what's up? Welcome in, Tyler. Not enough dragons with ETB effects? I feel like there's at least a few good ones. I'm thinking like Silumgar, both Silumgars. There's definitely some red ones that do like damage and stuff. I guess Balefire and Dracuseth are on attack. I mean, for many years I ran, who's the 5 damage one? Boggart and Hellkite. I ran that one for years and years. And that one's probably like a little underwhelming by today's day and age. Mirror Entity is the best angel. Yeah, you know. Anyway, so what we're going to do today, we're going to talk about the bracket system. Why? Because I've had a video half done on this for weeks, literally since like the announcement, and life's just been too busy to like sit there and finish editing it. And like at this point, you know, what I recorded is probably 3 weeks old, so like my takes have probably changed a little bit since then. Probably not tons, but you know, there's new information to consider. So I want to take a look at this bracket system, and I know there's not a lot of people in here yet, but I want to get your guys' take on what you're seeing from the bracket system. So when I first read through this, I read, starting with 1, Exhibition, bracket 1. Decks prioritize theme over function. They often have a goal outside of winning, anything from showcasing an undersupported mechanic to a favorite artist. No game changers, no mass land denial, no extra turns, no 2-card combos, and few tutors. For me, that one's pretty clear. The only real discrepancy is what is few tutors, right? Like that's maybe a little bit of a gray area, but everything else is pretty clear cut for me on that one. So it's probably not like a lot to discuss. 2, I feel very, very similarly about, which is that 2 is core. Decks are focused and functional, but contain suboptimal cards and strategies comparable to average modern precon. Wins are often telegraphed and incremental. Actually sounds like a lot of fun. No game changers, no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, no 2-card combos, and few tutors. Again, we see the few tutors thing, the little gray area. No chaining extra turns, so in theory, a single extra turn is okay. And that seems reasonable. Extra turns are very strong. Even a single extra turn can warp a game, but if the rest of the deck is weak, it may not necessarily. It just depends. But 3 is where I want to focus our attention. Speaking of ladies looking left, let me see if that deck list is still online. I have been thinking about playing ladies looking left for, like, I don't know, 10 years. If that deck list is still out there, I may actually try and play it at some point. Try and play it at some point. There it is. Ladies looking left. Just out of curiosity, this deck was added 12 years ago. Was last updated 4 years ago, and has 85,000 views. Look at that. Yeah. What we are going to do, though, while we're here, is just download this deck list for future play, because I think it'd be fun to play that deck. It's been kind of the, like, go-to meme deck for many years, and yeah, it'll be a fun little thing. Anyway, back to what we're doing. Don't distract me. So when I shot my video, and I think I ended up shooting it twice, as I started looking through it, the big thing that I noticed is that it seems like too many things can fall into bracket number 3. Bracket number 3 is upgraded, and that is, it says, I like strong cards and I'm ready for battle. Decks are thoughtfully designed, powered up by synergy and additional card quality. Players may expect the game to end out of nowhere with powerful spells and some combos. 0 to 3 game changers, no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns. No chaining extra turns, no mass land denial that makes sense. 0 to 3 game changers is complicated. That's another complicated thing. We might look at the game changers list also while we're here. And so when I shot the original video, which I don't know, we may still put out at some point, we'll see. I started thinking about a lot of things that would be a bad time, but can still show up in bracket 3. So what I started thinking about, and I noticed I kind of fell onto this trend, is think about old commander win conditions. So, like, for a mono blue deck, the win condition today is probably Thassa's Oracle or something that looks like that. Where, what about the old, like, Enter the Infinite Labman combo decks? Because those decks can still win pretty fast if you ramp the right way. And, like, if you build that deck to win as fast as possible, that deck's still going to win pretty quickly, turn 6 maybe, right? And none of that is off limits in bracket 3. What else? Like Mass Burn? I don't know, just like a good Perforos deck, right? May have like none of the game changers, right? Could easily fall into this list, but the game can end easily in 5 or 6 turns because it's Perforos, right? So yeah, I started thinking about it, and like, it seems like bracket 3 needs more guardrails on it. Like, you need to strike this weird balance of, you want it to be, you need the bracket system to be open enough and like easy enough to understand that you don't need like an advanced degree in calculus to figure out if your deck is in bracket 3. But I think you also want to push the more powerful things up, right? You think the game changer list is lacking as some cards are way more powerful than others? Yeah, we'll take a look at that after, because I actually had a lot of thoughts on the game changers list. We should probably open that up while we're talking about it. Where do we save that? Is it this one? Yep, there's the game changers list. So we'll come back to that. There it is. Yeah, so like I started thinking about like past win conditions from Commander. So I started like Palancron. Palancron's an incredibly annoying card, not on the game changers list, right? And I wouldn't necessarily want to see it in 3. Are a lot of people still playing Palancron? Probably not that many. Actually, we could probably look that up. We have tools for that. We do have tools for that. Just out of curiosity. So for those that don't know, as long as they haven't changed anything, because I haven't really been super in touch with everything, EDHREC looks at the last 2 years worth of decks. So in the last 2 years, it's in 10,000 decks, which is like, that's a little bit, but it's not insane. I wouldn't even call that a staple. That is more rare than it is a staple. I mean, it probably also doesn't help that it's $44 in paper. That's probably a strike against it also. I haven't looked at what's Thassa's Oracle cost. Yep. Yeah, $16. Yeah, so one of those is definitely cheaper than the other. But yeah, so I started thinking about that, and I started, what else was I thinking about as I was going through, like, again, the burn decks. I mean, even just like, where is it? There it is. Even a good Aurelia deck, right? I can go infinite with Aurelia in this list and still be a bracket 3 deck. Yeah, like what Fish said, everything is a 3 is the new it's a 7 argument, right? And that's sort of the issue that I noticed, is that, yeah, I think 3 is a little too broad. Like, they're just, they're, there isn't enough guardrails, right, to push the more powerful things up. And I don't know. It sits in it's too big, right? I think it's too big of a category, right? Because I understand. So if 2 is the precon decks or things close to precons, so 3 is upgraded from that, and like, I don't know. We're in this tricky spot in the game too, where like cards are so powerful that even like, I noticed toward the end of when I was filming a lot, I would say like, all right, everyone bring a weaker deck, like intentionally a weak deck. But what happens with that is that means that people tend to run less removal, and that means that like there's just a mass of creatures on the board around turn 6, and even though like no one was really trying to like drag race their way to the win, just by virtue of having modern creatures in your deck that are powerhouses, right? Like, the game is ready to like turn on a knife edge at any point, even at turn 6 in a weaker game, just because, again, people tend to run less removal in weaker decks. But like, the creatures themselves are just so powerful that if they're on the board at all, right, then powerful things are probably happening, and the game, can fall out of whack real quick. Should split 3? Yeah, because like, it does feel like, I don't know, and maybe part of it is that like I just need to adjust my expectation to what a 3 is, right? So, maybe 3 is, yeah, I show up with Aurelia and do the Hearth and Home combo as fast as humanly possible, which, that can be anywhere between turns 5 and 7 on average, if that's, if I bring the deck that's like sole purpose is to do that. And is that a good time for category number 3? Probably not the best. Because like, I mean, yeah, through and through, like, that deck should be in 4, right? Like, through and through, that deck, I made that deck to be basically as strong as I could make it, and that's where optimized decks go. But the problem is that, like, yeah, there isn't like enough restriction here to push a good Aurelia deck up into the thing. And and I'm just using Aurelia as an example. There are so many powerful things. Like, let's talk about like Tatiova, right? Tatiova's still disgusting. And is Tulane Tulane's gotta be on the game changers list, right? Where is there's some commanders. What color is Tulane? It's multicolor, right? Yeah, Tulane's not on here. That card's disgusting. So, like, you could literally play a Tulane deck and upgraded, and you wouldn't be breaking the rules. All right, I'm going to catch up on chat here real quick. All right, so Flintlock says, I think it's a great tool for figuring out your vibe, but it falls flat on actually figuring out your deck power. All of my decks are 2s plus a few game changers, but range and power from 5 to 10 to 8 to 10. Yeah, that's reasonable, right? I agree with a lot of that. Like, you can get the vibe going, right? But the vibe doesn't necessarily directly translate to deck power. And in my years of doing content and playing Commander a lot, I realized that like people are absolutely awful at evaluating their own decks, just horrendous, right? And so that's a thing as well. I think the Fish says, I think the game changer list is lacking, and some of the cards are way more powerful than others. Yeah, we'll go through that in just a minute here. Green having only 3 cards is wild. Yeah, I agree. There needs to be more green cards on that list. Notably, Craterhoof Behemoth not on that list. How? No idea. No idea, right? Like, I'm going to double check, make sure that's accurate. Where is it? Green. There is no Craterhoof Behemoth right here. How is that a thing? That has been like the most consistent green win condition for like, what year is it? 14 years now? Yeah. According to the current bracket system, your Skitterix deck is 1 Bolus's Citadel away from being a 2. I expect some salt in the future. Yeah, right? Bolus's Citadel, that's got to be on the list, right? Yeah, Bolus's Citadel. Okay. Yeah, I agree with Bolus's Citadel on the list for sure. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think you need to add more to these to restrict things further, but the balancing act is you don't want to add too much, right? You need to keep these things simple and easy to understand, but also make them reasonably effective. And God, it's such a hard thing to do, right? Because I mean, they've essentially they intentionally powered up the game, right? So things are just faster, and God forbid you have someone like me that played like old Commander where things were slow and dirtily. The modern era is a tough adjustment, and I can play that way, right? Like I can jam all the best cards in a deck, and it's not my favorite way to play, and I don't like having to play that way all the time. And I know that's a playgroup thing, and sure, whatever. But back in the day when they didn't print cards for Commander, or at least when they only did it like once a year, then the format wasn't so powerful, right? Like decks were much slower, they were much easier to stop, and I know there were I know even in 2012 there were fast decks, but a fast deck was still probably turn 5, turn 6. And that was, I was thinking Zur the Enchanter was one of the most powerful ones. And as good as Zur the Enchanter was, if you just have a deck that's full of removal, you blow up the Zur and the deck falls apart, right? Not that no one was building, well, I don't want to say no one, but generally you weren't getting into EDH just to build a deck to counter your buddy's deck unless, your buddy beat you with it one too many times. But yeah, so and yeah, I don't know, just things were less consistent. That's the phrasing I want. Everything was less consistent, it was slower, it was easier to stop and slow down a game back then, and now it just things can spiral so quickly. And what I think is unfortunate about that is that it means if you have a bad opening hand, it means you may just not get to really play in that game. If a game's going 10 turns, you can draw your way into the game, maybe by turn 4 or 5, maybe even 6, depending on what's happening, right? And have kind of a slow, auspicious start before that. Now it's you just can't, right? If there's not a piece of ramp and a piece of card draw in your hand, are you going to do anything in the game? Big question mark. Okay, back to comments. Uh, Price doesn't seem to be a thing in Game Changers list. Sarah Sanctum's on the list. Yeah, Sarah Sanctum was a weird one for me. Uh, for sure. Sarah Sanctum is a good card. It is very powerful, but it's so narrow and so expensive that like I rarely ever run into it. And like I play on Magic Online, and even when I did run into it on Magic Online, I'm like, oh, it's good. It's very good, but like I don't know. It's narrow enough that it didn't bother me, right? It's not like Gaia's Cradle, which is just like generically good and insane all the time. You agree with the lack of guardrails. To be honest, they should split into two different brackets and add those guardrails. Yeah, yeah, right. Like, because it feels like intent wise, I don't know. It feels like three should be like a little good, but not that good. Like they have it here. I like strong cards and I'm ready for battle, but like, does that mean you're ready to deal with like a Perforos deck that wants to kill you in like 5 or 6 turns? Does that mean you're ready for like, I mean, any disgusting Voltron commander that wants to kill you in 5 or 6 turns? I don't know, because if that is the case, that does seem like there's a fairly big jump between these two, between two and three. Um, but I don't know. And again, part of the thing that I've been trying to like, this is a mental thing for me, is that like I know that I need to adjust to what the game is now, right? And I don't necessarily like doing that, but we're not playing 2010 Commander anymore, right? Like the game is inherently different. The people that play the game are different and they have different expectations, right? In 2010, you played Commander to generally get away from the competitive formats, and with Commander being as big as it is, like a lot of people from competitive formats have come in with that mindset and want to go faster, more consistent, and then the cards that were printed were also faster and more consistent, allowing players to be even more faster and consistent, right? You just asked one question. Are we here to have fun or cut throats? That's a really good way to break that down. I like that, actually. Right? So you can kind of do away with all this and, like, yeah, are we having fun or are we cutting throats? And, people can still be deceptive, and you can't really, like, do anything about that. But, like, I don't know. That's I actually like that, right? Because again, I've talked about this for years. With all of these systems, with this system, with the 10 point system, the one that I use, which is sort of like a 4 point system. I liked I liked low power, mid power, high power, and CDH. That was kind of what we used in the channel for years. But to some degree, skipping past all of that, it's like, yeah, are we here to thrash, or I just want to like chill, drink a beer, and have a good time, right? Um, so yeah, I like that. I like that. Are we here to cut throats, or are we here to have a good time? Feels like I should make that into a short or something. That seems like a pretty snappy title. uh, I like how Commander Salt uses synergy and practical power level system to give a realistic bracket. I have not seen that one. Um, and I was talking about this with someone outside the Magic world a few weeks ago when all the bracket stuff was announced, and one of the things I started thinking is like, what would it take to program a thing that you put your deck list into and it spits a power level back out at you? Like, it would take a lot of iteration, a lot of time and money, and a lot of effort, like, a developer to sit there and do it. But uh, what would it take? And as I started thinking about it, I'm like, man, you need to think about like card combos and synergy, and like there's so many things. You can do it. It's theoretically possible to get something that does something, but like, boy, does it seem like a lot of work. You haven't seen Tulane in a long time? Oh, that's fair. Again, I haven't been playing that much. Back when I was playing, when I was playing like a lot before the pandemic, or even during the pandemic a little bit. Like Tulane was just like, someone in my local played Tulane and was just like, disgusting about it. So, a lot of bad times there. Oh yeah, Seedborn Muse not on the list. Tapped out. Yeah, I still use Tapped Out, which everyone tells me is bad now, and they lack all the features of the new sites, which is probably a fair hit. But all of my deck lists are on Tapped Out, and I'm not about to move them. So we're just kind of locked in at this point. There's a great question. If something is a win condition, does that make it a game changer by their definition? That is a fantastic question. And that's sort of the question that I've had, is that like, where's that list at? Right here. Torment of Hailfire is not on this list. Torment of Hailfire, I'm going to be pretty miffed if it shows up in like a 2 or a 3 game, right? And yeah. And like, so, I agree that all these cards are powerful, but like, are the finishers the things we should be concerned about? Because something like a Torment of Hailfire drastically reduces the amount of turns that a game will go. Because more often than not, at least one player's gonna die, if not 2, if not all 3. But even if they don't, they usually lose so many resources that they just like can't do anything after. Like, it's, unless you like Teferi's Protect out of a Torment of Hailfire or like Counterspell, there are some ways around it. If you have like a ton of life, or if you have like a ton of tokens, you can get out of it. I guess treasure tokens were a way to do it, but Dockside's gone now, so that's a thing. But it's not that you can't play around it ever, but like, for a lot of decks, it was just hard, right? There's certain things, like if you're playing a token deck, sure, maybe you get around it, but in general, a card like that really shortens up how long the game's gonna go. But yeah, I do like that question of if it's a win condition, and like a good one at that, particularly the ones you can't react to. That's the problem with Torment. Torment you can only react to on the stack. Craterhoof Behemoth is like more or less the same thing. Yeah, you can shoot it, but the damage is already done once it ETBs. So like, the things where like only a counterspell really works. What else? What else falls into that category? I mean, Craterhoof and Torment are the ones that kind of drive me the craziest. The former, again, looking at old win conditions, Exsanguinate, although it usually takes a lot more mana to make Exsanguinate lethal than it does for Torment. Torment's got that like ×3 multiplier on it, which means you just one doubler, and if you hit every swamp and play a mana doubler on like turn 4 or 5 and then drop a Torment, right, like it's probably going to kill someone. Where with Exsanguinate, you need multiple doublers and like a lot of setup to really do that. But yeah, that's sort of a question I would like to answer. I would like to answer that, like, should there be more win conditions on here? Because I get it, these are a lot of like powerful CEDH type cards. And yeah, they're certainly very powerful, but like, what about the win conditions that kind of just like end normal Commander games? Should we clamp those down a little, right? Like, Torment probably needs to go on there. Does Insurrection need to go on there? Yeah, it ends games sometimes, but like, I don't know, it's pretty slow and it's very inconsistent in my opinion. Like, if the board isn't set up right, Insurrection, and for that reason, like, I haven't really seen many Insurrections the past few years. So let's see. I will say I actually quite appreciate what they are going for here. I deliberately build for the vibe of bracket 2 with the occasional 3 and have since long before the system was revealed. Okay, yeah, and so I think this is a really good start. I don't think this should be the final form. I think it needs a little bit more. Like, it needs to cook a little bit longer. I think it's a good start. I do like what they've done here with, because you can't just have the numbers. You do need something that defines it. And we've got loose definitions with the text, but we've also got like sort of numerical things with these bottom bullet points here. And it's like, I don't know, for this one, you need to add maybe 2 or 3 more bullet points. We can argue about what those bullet points are. And that's certainly going to be the hard part of it, but it just needs a little more. It needs a little more, I think, to really distinguish between what's 3 and what's 4, because I think they're just like, I think these two blend a little more than like I'm comfortable with, right? Again, I can take my Aurelia combo deck, and it technically fits in either one of these because, you know, it should very firmly be a 4, because it like almost always wins by turn 7 if the game goes that long, but it can win turn 5, turn 6 if things go right. So pre-EDH actually being pre-EDH. Old white card draw circa 2010 was rough. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Steel Shaper's Gift and any equipment. That's your card draw in white 2010. Although, you know what's interesting, though, is that the game was slower, so you could use weird bad cards. Here's cards that, like, I don't even know if you guys have seen these cards, especially if some of you are newer. Fish may have seen these just because Fish has played a long time, but what's that called? Sears Land Dial or something like that? Sears Dial? I used to use this in Ashling, so landfall, whenever land enters, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. When the game was slower, this was an okay card. It wasn't amazing, but it was okay. Mind's Eye, actually, in the right deck, Mind's Eye is still... it's still playable. Typically, from what I've seen of this, you probably want to be playing it in a control deck. I run it in some of my Ashling builds, and it's actually reasonable there because you're leaving up mana with that deck. So, you know, something like old card draw like this still can be okay. I mean, it's not the same as like playing Galta and then just playing, you know, Rishkar's Expertise, which is usually game-winning card draw for 6 mana, but Flintless says, the biggest issue I see is that it isn't just a power scale. You kind of need to pair it with the 1 to 10 scale, but then you're getting too complicated. Yeah, right? That's exactly the issue. And I've talked about this for years. That's exactly the issue, is that you need something that's not too complicated, but robust enough that it's effective. And therein lies the challenge. What's surprised not on the Game Changers list is Field of the Dead. Yeah. Yep. Where is it? We're going to find it eventually. It's one. There it is. No Field of the Dead. Yeah, seems like it should be on there. That is a disgusting land. Like, I mean, Field of the Dead is a win condition, basically. I don't know that I've not lost to a Field of the Dead when I've seen one, because, you know, one, if they're doing that, that means they're playing a lands deck, and lands decks are already insanely strong. And just like, your ability to deal with landfall triggers is not good in any sort of like if you're playing a bracket 3 deck, your ability to deal with the Field of the Dead is probably not great, right? You probably have 2 or 3 cards in your deck, maybe, that blow up lands, and, you know, some of them aren't good. Like Strip Mine is a necessary evil, but it's not like a great card to actually have to use unless you have a million lands in play. Commander is weird for me. The expectation I used to have going into the game was that I would see some card I've never heard of before, but nowadays decks are a little too consistent and always see this. Yeah, decks are very samey now, right? Like, the powerful cards are known, and, you know, even beyond just like powerful cards, there's also just like, these are the things that make your deck work, right? Like, why do I run Sword of the Animus, Mask of Memory in every deck? Because they just make my decks work, right? And, you know, that is what it is. Yeah, it sucks, right? Like, you know, I remember in 2010, 2011, somewhere around there, when I first started playing, right? When I built my first commander deck, it was Shieldred. I spent like an hour and a half going through the $1 rares box of mono black at the shop, and, you know, conglomerated a bunch of stuff, and that's eventually what became my Shieldred deck, combined with, you know, a few things I already had. But Moxfield thought I had one for a while. Oh, with the like an algorithmic based deck power level thing. Yeah, the question is you need the like, or the problem is you need to like continuously iterate on it for like a long time to really kind of get like most scenarios. I don't know how accurate it was. Even tapped out. Yeah, I assume they still have it. There used to be a competitive to casual meter thing somewhere. Um, did they get rid of it? Yeah, I think it used to be over here somewhere. Maybe they got rid of it. And if they did, I'm guessing it's that same sort of thing where like they were probably figuring it just wasn't useful anymore and didn't feel like taking the effort to like update the data that it needs to consider to spit a number out at you. Uh, Game changers, I just feel are mean cards. Yeah, a lot of them are, right? Where's the game changer? There it is. Yep. Dranith Magistrate, Rift, Expropriate, Ad Nause. Yeah, there's some mean stuff in there. Grand Arbiter. There's mean stuff, and then there's also just like combos with a ham sandwich type stuff. Underworld Breach. Survival of the Fittest. You know, maybe Aura Shard should be on here. That's the one that turns all of your creatures into ET. Yeah, Aura Shards is a disgusting magic card, right? Aura Shard says no one else can have artifacts and enchantments until someone deals with Aura Shards, right? And yeah, it's a very disgusting card. Dictate of Erebos. And what's the other one? Grave Pact from Black. Not on here. I need to release my other video because I did spend some time going through like all of these and really thinking about like what cards are missing from the list. I like the old Counter Dorks, Disruptive Pit Mage, Disruptive Student, Mundungu. I don't know if I know that one. Field of the Dead is actually quintessential game changer because in a deck built for it, it's absurd, but even a deck that just tosses it in, it casually warps the game around it. Yeah, I agree. I agree on all counts, right? Like it's so much free value. Like I said, I don't know that I've ever not lost to a Field of the Dead. If I see one, I'm probably losing to it. I feel like decks being samey is just a factor of people talking about what works and what doesn't. It's partially that, but it's also like you have deck websites like EDHREC, right? And, you know, nothing against them, but, and, you know, I've used it many, many times over the years for so much stuff that I do, but it does kind of force everyone into using the same stuff, right? Like, you know, that's just, it is how it is, right? You know, basically it's the problem. It's the proliferation of data, right? There wasn't a great website for Commander like this in 2010. So, you know, you either needed an encyclopedic knowledge of cards or spend a lot of time on Gatherer researching your deck. And I will say that there is something about having to put that level of effort into your deck building that I do think kind of gets lost from today. You know, because you can build a deck so easily now and you can like easily get the 99 and like a lot of your deck slots are spoken for if you're trying to build something strong, right? Flintlock says there's definitely some groupthink going on for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. It's also part that, like, WotC's printed stronger cards, but then there's also the part of, like, the crowd is different, right? In 2010, people were playing Commander to do something different, right? You know, you get tired of playing just, like, standard tournaments or Legacy or whatever you were playing over and over and over and kind of... Because in those formats, competitive standard, you see, like, what, 3-4 decks, maybe? And, right? So, you know, of a given period of standard, if there's anywhere between like 1 and 2,000 cards legal, you see what, maybe 100 of them in the, you know, top 3 decks that are everyone's playing. So I like when I was playing competitive standard, I always felt that way. Like, man, they print so many cool cards that you'll just never use because they don't fit into a competitive standard deck. And when EDH started to become a thing, I'm like, oh wow, this is a great place to play all of the weird stuff that like they print. They, you know, someone went through effort making this card, and like it's nice if it has a home somewhere. Let's see. Groupthink. What up, Covert? You see what you get. You use what you see, and on EDHREC, you only see what gets used. Yeah, right? So it's sort of a continuous feedback loop there. And I will say this about EDHREC is that, like, and this isn't going to be true of everything. In fact, it's probably not true of, like, we'll call it 50-50 just for easy's sake. But, like, if you look at the EDHREC for Aurelia, the cards that it actually points out, like, aren't super interesting. All right, so, like, the top stuff here, this looks like everyone's building Angel Tribal with Aurelia, which is a fair thing to do, right? I have my own Angel Tribal. But you can also build... She's not the greatest Voltron commander anymore. There's better options. You can get, like, your 2 and 3 drops down nice and quick, so she's not necessarily great for that. But, like, creature combat value is, like, still a strong thing. I guess we're seeing some of that here. Blade Historian, of course, some of these things. But, yeah, like, if you build an Aurelia deck just from EDHREC, it's not going to be that great. Like, it'll be okay, but it's not exciting. What I found is that, like, when I started building not the EDH version of decks, like, they're much more exciting, they're more personal to me, and it means more when I do something with them. And, and again, it's not like I'm trying to build bad decks. I'm just, like, not trying to run, the most generic thing over and over. So this is an 18% of Aurelia decks. This card's insanely strong in, like, Angel Tribal with Aurelia, because all of your stuff becomes huge. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, if you just copy and paste EDHREC, the level of enjoyment that you get is probably not going to be the same. I mean, my favorite deck ever that I love to play, beside Ashling, is Gigantha. And, like, my Gigantha deck is Tap Creature Tribal. That's just not going to be represented here in, the top cards for Gigantha, right? And that I love playing that deck. That deck is so much fun to play. Not as fun for other people at the table because it is kind of a mess headache, but that is what it is. Anybody else remember the Mox Pearl website? Is that still up? Did that go down? I don't know. I enjoy using Scryfall and going deep for gems, but I also prefer to play it at lower power level. Yeah, right. So, if you want that older weird stuff, most of the powerful old cards have already been discovered, right? Like, Commander got so big in the 2018 to 2022 era of social media where, like, it was financially rewarding for people to go dig for old gems that are powerful, right? So, like, maybe you haven't discovered it, but I think most of what's out there is known. And generally speaking, newer cards are more powerful than old cards, with the exception of, like, fast mana and tutors, which they don't really print like that anymore. You don't use EDHREC until you're done selecting cards, and about 8 times out of 10, those cards are somewhere there. Yeah, right. And, like, again, especially when I was, like, doing a lot of stuff for video, I would check EDHREC just to make sure I didn't miss some, like, blatant combo card, right, that, I knew needed to be in the deck. But, and, what's interesting, too, is that, like, EDHREC changed the way that, like, I did my channel, because before that, I had to sit there, like, I just had to have an encyclopedic knowledge of cards and just go through Gatherer a lot, right? Like, and you just needed to know a lot of cards. And now, to be fair, there were less cards to know, and, like, they came at a much, like, slower stream and a slower pace, so it was, like, easier to learn them. But I've done the back into, like, 2017, I don't know, but pre-EDHREC, like, I've done the Boros creature search so many times between, like, 2013 and 2018, right? Trying to find, like, gems and, things that help, like card draw was always the big one that was tough to come by. So like I've done a lot of like, all right, I need to see like every creature in this color, right? Because I'm trying to do a thing and need to know what's available. Like I did a lot of those back in the day, and like, you know, it's interesting to do that, but it takes a lot of time. EDHREC, when you're like on a schedule to get a video out, right, does make things a lot quicker, a lot easier. I'll give you that. Speaking of Voltron commanders, Caddy Bree of Mithril Hall is finally on MTGO. Oh, which one's that? First strike reach. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each equipment attached to it. Oh, that's got to get big. Remove all counters from it. It deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature an opponent controls, where X is the number of counters removed this way. Cool little card. Cool little card. Definitely the ability to get big and do damage. Something I want to note, a lot of powerful commanders have died off. You mentioned Tulane, but I genuinely have not seen one in a while, and I play a lot of Commander. That's fair. I don't play that much Commander anymore. I don't know who like the top dogs are anymore, so I'm kind of going off of, you know, a few years ago from when I was playing a ton. Another example would be EDHREC. Really powerful, but not nearly seen as it used to be. Yeah, oh, EDHREC was disgusting back in the day, but yeah, now EDHREC is probably just like average for like a good Commander deck. Okay, next step. We're going to take a look at this Game Changers list. The question I pose to you guys is, as we go through this, what is missing from this list, right? Yeah, let's just read through it. So we'll start with white. White, we got Draneth Magistrate, Enlightened Tutor, Sarah Sanctum, Smothering Tithe, Trouble in Pairs. Having looked at the list, and we already talked about it a little bit previously, Sarah Sanctum is a bit of a weird include for me. Again, it is powerful and it is good. It's also expensive, but it's so narrow, right? You're talking about one deck type, Enchantress, basically, which Enchantress is strong. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a, you know, every time I see an Enchantress deck, I'm like, oh, buckle up. Hope I draw that Austere Command when I need it. I guess farewell now, but, you know, it's good and it's powerful. I don't know that it's like menacing enough that it necessarily needed to make this list just based on like frequency of how often it appears.